Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to Inspirational Africans on Muslim Television Ahmadiyya. Today we bring into you the very profound story of one young gentleman who braved impossible odds, overcame several challenges to become a very successful person. Today we are going to find out the story of this remarkable gentleman. Let's go and find out who he is.
In this edition of Inspirational Africans, we bring you the inspiring story of a philanthropic African legal practitioner whose philanthropic works has helped relieve the less endowed persons who had suffered injustice due to their inability to afford the cost of seeking justice and defending their rights. From a poor and deprived home, toggled with a highly rated community of immorality and vices with no hope for a better future, he struggled very hard through perseverance and discipline with focus on his creator and education, and he is today an icon of hope, motivation, and help to his nation, especially the poor. And he is Barrister Francis Xavier Kojo Sosu. Born in 1979 to a poor and deprived family in Accra, Newtown, to a mother who was a victim of trocosi, thus a slave to the shrine for many years of her life, and a father who was also slave to alcoholism after he lost his business in 1982 during the repatriation of Ghanaians from Nigeria, Francis grew up through incredible challenges, becoming a homeless street kid. With 6 siblings, daily life was a matter of survival for Francis Sosu as he became a street kid hanging on to any job, selling iced water, pepper, tomatoes, kerosene, and he pushed trucks and served as a porter at the Malamata market, among others, just to keep the body and the soul together. Due to his disadvantaged background, Barrister Francis began nursery school at age 8, where he was often mocked at as Nursery 1 Papa, thus the father of the kids in the nursery. He never got discouraged, saying, "I knew it was only through education that I could make something out of this life." Though I grew up among social miscreants like drug addicts and pushers, alcoholics, thieves, and the likes, my desire for a better future through education made me defy all odds and remained uncontaminated by the bad morals that surrounded me. Barrister Francis is today grateful to the Village of Hope orphanage home who came to his rescue at the peak of his education when hopes were nearly lost. Today, he has represented a number of Ghanaians who had fallen victim to injustice as they could not afford the cost for seeking justice or defending their inherent God-given human rights, such as the man that lived 14 years in remand and a mentally challenged person who couldn't seek an attorney. Please stay tuned and be inspired.
Welcome back, and with me here is lawyer Francis Xavier Kojo Sosu. Lawyer, thank you very much.
Sure.
And welcome to Inspirational Africans.
It's wonderful to be here.
Oftentimes in this program, we talk to a lot of elderly people who obviously have lived long and have achieved a lot. So you are one of the very young people that we're having on the show. This goes to show us what a great character you have been over the years. And reading through the story, we realize that you're a man who have had a vision from a very young age, and that vision has guided you throughout your life. What would you say is the vision of your life?
I would say the vision of my life is to live for God and impact lives. Live for God and impact lives. So that is the driving force of what has brought me this far. My desire to just live for God and also to make sure that everything I do impacts the life of others or influence the life of others. And that is what has brought me this far.
So live for God and impact others. And that has been the defining vision of your life. Now
Absolutely.
you own a successful chambers where you are a human rights lawyer, so I'm sure as a lawyer in other fields too. Let's go back to when you were a child, growing up in Mamobi. Could you foresee a bright future for yourself, or the circumstances under which you grew up could have made you very pessimistic?
Well, I must say, as a matter of fact, that I never perceived the life I'm living today. I never dreamt of a life of this magnitude. Honestly, I just believe that one day at a time, I take my chances, I take the opportunities that come my way, and make the best out of those opportunities. As to how far those opportunities were going to take me, I never knew. But obviously, with hindsight, now I can say for a fact that anytime you make a decision to live for God and impact other people's life, it doesn't matter how little the beginning may look, the end is likely to be great. Because at the time I was growing clearly, the vision was very blurred. I never knew that I could ever become a lawyer. I never knew that my impact on other people's life could be this huge, that it could be acknowledged by people across, the world, and it could also be acknowledged by, this very program, so that I would even have the opportunity to share this story with others. All I knew was that I was living my very simple and very simplistic life.
Let's talk about that.
And growing up.
For you, like I know that you grew up in too much of a stable home.
Absolutely. I grew up in a family which was a victim of its own background and social circumstances. For example, my mother was a trokoshi, a girl given in slavery to a shrine. So she never had a skill, she didn't have training, she all her, young age and her teenage were spent in a shrine where she didn't have any skill. And she was a slave girl because she was used to pay the debt for her forefathers.
So Trokosi where? Here in Ghana?
Yeah, here in Ghana, in the Volta region, And then she comes from Keji in the Volta region, Kata Keji. Okay. And my dad was from Denu in the Volta region, and he did not get a chance to go to school. And he, apart from the fact that he was uneducated, he didn't have so much to show for. At a point, he learned how to sew. But somewhere in 1982, when Ghanaians were repatriated from Nigeria, he also lost everything that he was working for, because he was one of those young Ghanaians who had gone to Nigeria seeking for greener pastures. And since he lost everything, he just became a desperate drunk. And it was so difficult for him to overcome his own psychological struggles and emotional and social and economic struggles. And clearly, this was the man that got married to, someone who was a victim of slavery and a slave girl. So, home was clearly not any good thing.
If you like, a dysfunctional.
Very, very dysfunctional home. And unfortunately, as part of, for the African, the typical African home is a home with a view that the poorer the family is, the bigger the family must be, because you would not know which child may eventually be the one that will, become successful. So our parents used to give birth to, many kids, and we were not that many, but at least for the kind of economic condition that we found ourselves in, and having 6 children plus 1 adopted child, because that child was my mom's little sister's child, and she became orphaned, and we had to add it to us. So 9 people in a family with no education, no training, no skill, no job. Clearly, that was a very difficult.
How were you giving your daily bread?
Well, survival became the order of the day. We needed to survive, individuals. So we all were working to help the family. So all the kids became hawkers and sales, children, street children involved in.
So this was around Newtown in Accra?
Yes,
okay.
That is precisely so. It was quite exciting growing up, in Newtown, having all these challenges. Okay. The first major thing was that my elder sister, who was supposed to lead this enterprise, was blind.
Okay. Your elder sister was blind?
Yes,
Okay.
so she couldn't help much. She wasn't born blind, but this is somebody who just had measles.
Okay.
Clearly measles to parents who were uneducated,
Who didn't know
who
how
have the world view of, this fetish belief in the typical African tradition.
Okay.
So they thought she was being bewitched.
Okay.
They tried all kinds of concoctions from one shrine to another shrine to assist, just to find some assistance.
Okay.
Eventually, she could not make it, so she became blind.
Okay.
Now, it was later in the years that we realized that it was measles.
Okay.
But by that time, the medical doctors diagnosed that she had a distorted cornea.
Okay.
So pictures could not be formed, in her eyes.
And I suppose this added more pressure to the family. In addition to all the challenges you're facing.
It did. Considering all the difficulties we were having, and now having a sister who was blind, it was so difficult for the family. Then again, our second born, who was leading the enterprise together with me.
You are the third born?
I was the third born.
Okay.
And all of us were always involved in the selling. So myself and our second born led the enterprise. And we were selling everything sellable on the streets of Accra, from onions, tomatoes, pepper, fried fish, fresh fish. Sometimes I would go to the market to push trucks.
Okay.
Sometimes I would just go carry loads. Other times I'll be selling, iced water.
Okay.
And this was a time that mineral water had not yet,
Absolutely.
come into the scene. Okay. And we used to have, iced water in gallons.
In cups.
In gallons, and we serve with cups.
Cups, okay.
And once
the younger ones may not remember.
I know. Once you serve one person, you would have to use a lime to clean the cup before serving the next person. And this was an enterprise I was engaged in for several years.
So you sell, you make a little money, you bring it home?
Exactly, for the survival of the home.
Okay.
And because of this selling and all that, it affected my education.
Yes, so I was going to ask, at what point did you start education?
So because of that, the first time I set my foot in the nursery was when I was 8 years old.
You're 8 years. And the other students who had nursery, they were probably 2, 3?
I mean, of course, there were people who were, very young. And typically for, the Ghanaian culture, what happens is that when you go there, they call you the nursery papa.
Okay.
In other words, you are the father of the nursery, the nursery kids.
But what prompted you to enroll in nursery around that age?
Well, around that age, I saw people going to school.
Okay.
And sometimes I desired to be in school.
Okay.
In fact, there were many people who felt I was very intelligent, even at that age, because when I go to sell, I always make some money, and I was very smart, even though I was very young, and I was running errands for almost everybody around, because we're living in a compound house, typical compound house. So everybody knew that, look, this boy will do well. So sometimes people even had issues with my mom, that why wouldn't you enroll this man in school, And sometimes my mom did what she could. There were times that she took me to school, and they would tell her about the fees. Because of the fees, she would bring me back to the house because she didn't have the money. Until that fateful day when we went to Mofrachepe nursery, and over there, it was fairly cheap as at that time. And so she managed to enroll me there for me to begin school. So, well, many people were teasing and so on and so forth, but I braved the storm because I knew that, the speed in life of a person is determined by what is chasing him. I knew for a fact that, look, I was being chased by poverty, by low self-image. There were many people who laughed at us. My dad sometimes would go get booze and fall into gutters. We have to carry him home. And all these things were kind of, pressing. It was depressing.
How were you able to maintain your sanity, if I will put it that way, and your sense of, because a lot of children who find themselves in such homes, it's easy for them to break up, and become miscreants. How were you able to keep your focus in the midst of all of these challenges?
I think that is what is the focus of my vision. For God and for influence of other people. The determination to live for God and to impact and influence others. So as young as I was, I never played with church.
Okay.
In fact, I was a person who always led my blind sister to church anytime.
Yes, but coming from a family where your mom was, a slave in
a shrine,
and I'm not sure your dad was deeply religious.
At
How
all.
did your sense of religion,
that is one of the most, ironic, things I always say about, my life. Because my mom is a typical fetish, traditional African believer, but she would always encourage that go to church. She will always encourage that go to church. In fact, as far as my mom is concerned, the same God who came in the form of Jesus Christ is the same God that created the idols.
Okay.
So, she will always say, go to church.
Interesting.
Go to church and go to church. And for me, that played a key role because the fear of God and the desire to live for God, keeping that sanctity and not engaging yourself in all kinds of things, because I had the chance to do anything at Newtown. There were the times of scatter. When we say scatter, the military police those days would come to, Newtown, and they would be shooting, sporadically, and engaging in this, what we call the swoops, trying to arrest people.
So this is like the late 80s, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You'll be arresting people in Newtown, and you see people running for their life just because that was the den of weed smoking.
Okay.
It was very common. We were all smokers, passive smokers, for the avoidance of doubt, So it's very important, So the chance was, there were times that I was sent to go and buy weed, buy me this weed, buy me this thing. People send you, buy me some liquor, buy me that, and sometimes they would say test, and I would always not do so. And then
so all of these temptations were there.
They were there, and so they called me typically Roman father, like Roman Osofo.
So that's how you're known.
Yeah, Roman Osofo. This guy, no matter what you do, he has become like a dead goat.
Let's progress the story. So from nursery, how did your education progress?
So eventually from nursery, I was able to move to the ANT 8 and 6 primary school, also at Newtown.
Okay.
And at this point, typically, we used to go for morning and afternoon shifts.
Okay.
So anytime we're in the morning shift, as soon as we close, I'll go back to the street to be selling. Sometimes I will sell kerosene in the night. So those days when there were things like doomsaw, it was a blessing because then we can do more sales.
More sales of kerosene.
It's not like today that doomsaw is a problem. Otherwise, it wasn't a problem at all. And we used to make a lot of money just to be able to keep ourselves in school. And sometimes in the same school, I would go and sell in the morning if we're in the afternoon shift. Then, when my colleagues are coming, I'll rush home, prepare and come back to school. One of those days I recall very well, in the rush, I was knocked down by a car. And I had to have my hands hanged, to my neck, and yet went to school. Because at that material time, my desire for school was just so high, because that was the only place that I found some sense of fulfillment. Because anytime I do well in school, you see my teachers encouraging. So it was so exciting to always be in school. So I just took school, so seriously until I finished with the junior high.
Was any of your siblings in school with you?
Yes. When I was in school, the other siblings who were, after me were in school. In fact, my elder sister who wasn't blind, the one I come after directly, was also in school at the time. So we all went to sell, and then we go back to school.
So you're basically also helping to finance your own education.
Exactly. But what happened was that at a point in time in the basic school, I was involved in this poetry recital competition. And even though I'm an Eve, I used to be a very good, writer of poems, and I recite good poems in Ghana. So I represented the Greater Accra region and won and became first. And based on that, I had scholarship to cover my basic education. So that was what assisted me in finishing the basic education. Then I gained admission into the St. John's JHS at Kokomemle, just behind Joy FM, the multimedia group area there. And over there too, again, I was involved in another poetry recital that paid my school fees.
Well, then poetry has
poetry has been fantastic. I must admit, it used to be my passion. And I love to do poems.
Well, that's interesting.
I just love poems.
We should have you back in the fold.
That's why I love to watch you. Anytime
that's
you
remarkable.
do poems.
That's remarkable.
So that is how it went. But now, what happened in the junior high school was that my condition became worse.
Okay.
Because my parents lost the home that we were,
the shelter
we had at Newtown. So we had to relocate to Taifa, Burkina. At the time, Taifa, Burkina was a complete bush. And we were going to live in one small single room. All 9 of us.
Wow.
No light, nothing. And I was then in the junior high school.
At Kokomlemle.
At Kokomlemle. So going to live with them would mean I would have to stop school. But I felt it wouldn't help me if I did that. So I decided to remain at Newtown. And remaining at Newtown meant I needed to be a street kid, permanently. So I was at that time living at the Malata market.
So around how old were you now?
I think I should be in about it's around 13, 14, thereabouts.
So you're early teens?
Yeah, early teens. So I was at the Malata market. Used to sleep at the Malata market in front of the daycare center. And then every morning we will go. Sometimes if you have money, you can pay and you'll be given an opportunity to sleep under the shelter in the daycare center. But if you don't have money, you have to sleep in front of the kiosks. And if it rains, you would see yourself wet. And there were many times I would be wet and I'll go to school with my wet uniforms. And I recall that when we were going to write our very final BECE, which is the basic certificate examination, the night before it had rained, my uniform was wet, and I had to wear the wet uniform to go and write the exams because I didn't have any choice. Or perhaps the only choice I had was to go write the exam even with my wet uniform. So this was how childhood was. In the midst of all these things, by the grace of God, I was still able to pass the BECE with distinction.
Even though you were a street kid?
Yeah, I was still able to pass with a distinction. And that's where I always say that no one has an excuse to fail. Failure is a choice that we make. And success is a choice. Now, the problem is that, the path of failure is so easy. Easy life, sleeping at the time you desire, and living an easy-go life and all that. But the path of success is very difficult.
But when you were going through living as a street kid and having the rain drenching you, didn't you get to a breaking point? It's like, why me? Why should I go through all of these challenges when other kids are having it easy?
Interestingly, anytime I think about that, it encourages me. I've had many times to worry about my circumstance. But I worry to the extent that I see, it gives me strength to work more. Because at Newtown, where we're living in that home, typical compound, house. Every night, whilst you are struggling with gari, with pepper or something, you'll be smelling the aroma of jollof rice and fried chicken. And my brother, it used to be very intimidating. And we used to wonder why people should be eating jollof and you
are struggling with dairy.
And every morning you see the kids, they dress them up, they are going to school, and you have to go to the market to go and sell. So I purposed in my heart that whatever is going to make me one day enjoy the same jollof, I need to work at it. And at the very early stages, I realized that education was a way forward because anytime I did well in school, I saw the benefits that came. In fact, anytime I was first, after the first year I went to the BECE first class, I was first throughout. And anytime I was first, I was greeted with chocolates. My teachers would buy me books, pens, uniforms.
So for you, education was really your only way out.
I knew that, look, this thing, just do well. Just do well in the education. All the benefits you want, you find it.
Let's make progress to secondary school.
So, yes, fast forward from BECE, I gained admission to St. John's Grammar Junior High School. Now, at St. John's Grammar School, I must confess that apart from the first fees, the admission fee I paid, I never had money to pay any fees anymore. Okay. So there were many times the teachers would come and lash me and sack me, and I would go and come back. They would lash me and sack me, I'll go and come back. And it used to be 6 hot lashes.
For not paying your fees?
Yeah, not paying your fees. But I was so determined that I said lashes will not send me out of school. So I was a very chronic school fees defaulter. I didn't have the money to pay, but I will come to school. So the only option is that you beat me and sack me. But when I go, I'll come back. So the strategic thing I did was that if I was going to make myself relevant in that school, then I may have to take some leadership position. Yeah. So I became the class prefect, for starters. So if you sack me, I go with the cupboard keys and everything, and work cannot progress. So when I come back, it is more likely that you will say, okay, it doesn't matter, come in. And it was a very strategic position that I held from, class captain. And I was always holding onto it and moving on and on and on and on and on until it got to a point. My poetry recital opportunities came again. I did a poem for the school. I wrote a poem in English, The Riches of Culture, translated it to Ghana, went into national competition, and then I won the national second best poet at the Center for Culture in Cape Coast.
They don't do such competitions anymore.
and that gave me some acceptance by the school and all that. So the headmistress also gave me a note as a pass. So now when the teachers come to sack fees, at least I have a pass. And then when I showed them the pass, then they will exempt me. And this continued and continued and continued until even in the final year, I had risen to become the SRC president for Greater Accra Zone 5. That had Presec and some Achimota, some of these very big schools under my jurisdiction, including St. John's Grammar, WAS, Osudoku, and all that. Then I was the senior boys prefect of my school. But even though I was combining these two very sensitive positions, I was still a street kid, sleeping in a kiosk at Kotobabi. And that kiosk is still there today. Wow. It's just opposite the Kotobabi police station. The last time I passed there, I realized that they were trying to remove it, but it is still there. And anybody who want to do tourism, you are free.
And how are you still catering for yourself, paying? Did you even get to pay any small fees?
No, I didn't. So, apart from the lashes, and you see, what I was doing was to rather try and get some money that can keep me going. So anytime we were on vacation, when I was in St. John's Grammar School, I would still go back to the street to sell. Okay. And sometimes you see your colleagues passing, you have to dodge them. When they pass, then you resurface. And I was selling those days refresh. Now we don't have refresh again. Selling it on the ring road.
Even as senior prefect and SRC, president
and all that. It was difficult at that time. In fact, even as senior prefect, I remember very well that I used to beg money. Sometimes I walk from Kotobabi all the way to Alaju to beg money on the street to take a car to school. But you go to school and you keep a very nice, positive face.
Of course, you're the senior prefect.
You are all over the place and doing what you have to do. And today, down the history, you would go back to St. John's Grammar and they would say, well, Francis Xavier was one of our best senior boys prefect. But they never knew that I had to combine this very difficult situation with that. And it was eventually at a point of dropping out of school because it became so desperate that when we were going to write the final SSSC examination, I didn't have money to register. Okay. And then that was when everybody said, look, we've done what we can. There is nothing we can do again. It was at this point that one of the teachers, known as Roland Bulle, and Roland at the time was working with an orphanage called the Village of Hope. And the Village of Hope was a project of Churches of Christ. Okay. So he said, look, you can apply and let's see whether we can assist you. So I applied. And in fact, I wasn't qualified because I wasn't an orphan. You may describe me as a social orphan, but I wasn't, biological orphan. So clearly, and I wasn't below 12 years, but these were the conditions for taking people there. But when they came and did a social inquiry report on me, they realized that I had a good prospect, and yet my life was a total mess. We took them to Malata where we were living, and how we graduated to the wooden kiosk at Kotobabi, and they went to see where my parents were living. They realized that this man, if we don't help him, he may be a fine potential, but this potential can just be lost. So they decided to step in and give me hope for the first time. Paid off all my school fees and all the debt. Wow. Gave me
because
a home.
You've had accumulated debt.
Oh, accumulated. But you see, I was declared hippie at that point. And my debts were forgiven. By the help of the Village of Hope. And they paid off the debt. Okay. And at that point, I had, this relief
for the first time.
And for the first time. And, a very enhanced, positive self-image. The belief that, yes, this is it. What I have always dreamt of, is just coming
you need to jump to summarize the story because we are running out of time, unfortunately. So Village of Hope took you in.
Took me into the Village of Hope orphanage, and then paid off all this, and then the results. Of course, we did our final examination, and I passed again. The first time I had a scholarship to do 1 year IT training with NIT. Then after that, I gained admission into University of Ghana to do Bachelor of Arts in Sociology, Archaeology, Russian language, and dance. I effectively combined all this, and at the end of the day, graduated with Sociology major and Archaeology minor. After which I went back to the Village of Hope to do my national service to help other orphans at the Village of Hope. Then after that, I came back to Legon to do my post-first degree LLB, which is the Bachelor of Laws. Then when I completed the Bachelor of Laws, somewhere in 2008, I gained admission into Ghana School of Law to do my BL, which is the Barrister at Law. And in 2010, I was called to the bar, to the Ghana bar to practice as a qualified lawyer. And whilst at the law school, Makola, I combined that program with an MPhil program, MPhil Sociology, which I did a coursework. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the MPhil. Why? Because I couldn't finish my research in time because I was combining the program. But after the MPhil failure, I've been able to go ahead to do an LLM program, Masters in Laws, in Oil and Gas Law, from University of Ghana, and currently pursuing a PhD program with the Open University of Malaysia, a course that I have just barely started and doing my project works and all that.
But currently you have your own
practicing law as a human rights and a public interest lawyer, having a law firm, the FX Law and Associates. We do human rights, public interest, oil and gas law, tax, corporate and commercial laws. And we represent people in a lot of administrative injustice matters. We do divorce, succession. You may call us general practitioners. We have about 5 lawyers in our firm. Our senior and head of chamber, lawyer Hamidu Adakrugu, has been a very fantastic partner, senior partner of our firm. We have lawyer Victor Opeku, who is also a partner of the firm. Lawyer William Aisio too, who is an associate of the firm. So it's been fantastic.
Where's your family now?
Well, my family is doing well. I got married in 2012. I always forget the date of my marriage. I don't know.
I'm not sure your wife will be pleased.
I know, baby. You know that it doesn't matter, right? What matters is I love you. That's the most important. So, I got married to a very beautiful woman, Felicia Kunedu, who is working with EcoBank. We have 2 beautiful kids, Clenam and Kadi, and they are all doing very well. We have lots of adopted kids, people we reach out to in various forms.
Your parents and siblings?
My biological family are also doing well. My parents are now living in a very wonderful place, no more a single room. By God's grace, we have been able to afford a very wonderful place for them somewhere in Kaswa. And the entire family is doing just well.
When you sit back in your office,
God's grace.
When you sit back in your office and you drive home to your wife and kids, and with your quiet time, and you remember the times that you didn't have a place to stay and how you were scraping for a living as a young child, what are the greatest lessons you'd want to share with our viewers?
Well, the greatest lessons is that God has a story behind everyone's story. God has a reason for whatever you are going through, and no condition is permanent. In fact, it doesn't matter the kind of circumstance you find yourself in. You can be a shining star even in the darkest of history. You can be that lily in the muddy situation that you find yourself in. You see, you can be that beacon, that light that can bring light to the very unfortunate circumstance that your family finds, itself in. Now, the truth is that no one can determine where he or she would want to be born. You cannot determine who should be your parent. You cannot determine your economic circumstance at birth. But you have the opportunity, once you are alive, to change the course of history. You can change the course of history of your family, the course of history of your society, and the course of history of your community. And I believe that this is exactly what I am set to do today, because I believe I have been helped by people like Village of Hope and Church of Christ, so that I can be a help to other people. And that is why, if you trace my practice, right from the time I became a lawyer, most of the cases that I've been engaged in, I've represented hundreds of wrongfully convicted people who are in prison because they don't have money, people who are unlawfully in custody, people who, and so on and so forth. People you will recall, Charles Entry, the mad person who allegedly wanted to go and kill the president. And because it was about the president, everybody was scared. But this is where you test, our integrity in our practice. It was wrong, so somebody needed to step in. And I had to step in. Nobody paid me a kobo. But I stepped in, we reversed the 10 years jail term that was handed over to him, and he was confined to the psychiatric home so that he can be treated. And there are many, many, many more people jailed for several years. And I mean, it's interesting. And we are doing this because we believe that we were saved to save others.
Lawyer Francis Xavier Kojo Soso, thank you very much for joining us on Inspirational Africans. And we can only hope that someone out there has been touched by your story. Assalamu alaikum.
The pleasure is mine. Assalamu alaikum.
Well, viewers, there isn't much to add. Thank you very much for joining us on today's edition. Until we meet again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.